This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Pursue Fitness Sportswear. Delighted to be joined by former two-weight world champion and pound-for-pound king, Andre Ward. We're here in London ahead of Virgil Lomachenko versus Luke Campbell. Andre, how you doing?
I'm good. It's always good to be in the UK. I'm happy to be here. Excited to kind of be around and interact with the fans and to see some great fights on Saturday night.
I've just mentioned it briefly off camera. Have you managed to get over the jet lag yet?
No. I do. I'm terrible with jet lag, just coast to coast. When I'm in the States and I go West Coast to East Coast, that's terrible. So this is even worse. This is twice as bad. But I'm trying to slowly adjust. I'm trying to stay on UK time, work out, just kind of keep my normal routine, drink a lot of water. So hopefully I'll start to come around by fight night so I'm not talking rubbish.
Who would have thought? Andre Ward does have a weakness, it's jet lag. So we're here for Lomachenko versus Luke Campbell. Break down the fight for me.
Man, I was just saying over there that, sometimes I may not have a full-on prediction or a concrete opinion until, right before the fight starts, because I try to make sure that I'm accurate, I'm thinking objectively, and not try to be first to have an opinion. So that being said, the low-hanging fruit is, Campbell will do well the first half of the fight, and Lomachenko will put my colleague Tim Bradley over there stealing my shine, and then Lomachenko will pull away. And that's kind of how I see it. And the reason why I say that is because Luke has shown that outside he's really, really good. Pure boxer, gold medalist, the whole nine. But mid-range and in close is where he struggles. He's not really comfortable there. Not sure if he shored up that area. I'm not sure if he and his team worked on that. But Loma's going to try to close the distance. Now, that's the question for Loma. He's fought a Pedraza. He, wasn't a great performance, good performance, but wasn't, an all-time great performance by Loma. And he's acknowledged that the height and the reach of Campbell is going to be something he has to overcome. So first half of the fight, very interesting. And I'm eager to see when the second, third, and fourth adjustment is made, can Luke Campbell keep up with Lomachenko?
Virgil Lomachenko is considered by many people to be the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world, which was a label that was anointed for yourself during your fighting career. Appreciate at the time you maybe didn't have the time to think about it, but now you've kind of retired from the sport and you're looking back at your career. What kind of pressure, if any, does that put on a fighter?
Oh, it's a lot of pressure. It's tangible. You feel like you can cut it with a knife, but we're used to it. Two-time gold medalist, 300 some odd amateur fights, almost 400 amateur fights with one loss. That's pressure. Fighting in the Soviet Union, and then coming out and fighting for a world title in your second fight and just having that pressure of being that guy. So as athletes, especially elite athletes, the pressure is part of our day. It's like a cup of coffee. Like it's commonplace. You learn how to deal with it. You learn how to function in the midst of it. Everybody feels it. But again, the great ones are the ones that can feel it, embrace it, and then let it propel them and push them to perform greater and not cause them to go in a shell. And Loma's that guy.
How are you finding retired life? When did you retire? It would have been about 18 months, 2 years ago.
2017.
How are you getting on?
I'm enjoying life, man. I miss it dearly, though. I'm gonna always miss it. I feel like being ringside is good and bad. It's good because I'm close enough, but I'm not in there. I'm not taking punches. I'm not delivering punches, but you're close enough where you're not in there, and you want to be. So. But the way I reconcile kind of the retirement thing and just the struggle of being retired is like I'm going to have to face this at some point in time, whether I'm 40 or 33 when I retire. So I'd rather face it when I'm young, still fresh, and can process it a little bit better, without having to get kicked out of the sport. I've seen too much of that in boxing. And I'm treating, I'm treating retirement like an opponent. I've studied this opponent. It's a formidable opponent. This opponent has beaten a lot of great men. And I hope to come out on top.
You mentioned being ringside is both a good thing and a bad thing. When you look at the light heavyweight division, nowadays you've got Vosdik, Bivol, Beterbiev, Kovalev. Yeah. Does that get the competitive juices flowing again when you look at how stacked the light heavyweight division is?
No. Those are young guys, for the most part. I mean, Kovalev's older. Beterbiev is a little bit older. Vosdik is young. Bivol is young. But I'm content letting those guys have their time. That doesn't get me riled up. But just being in the arena, being in the atmosphere, like being with my team in training camp, and of course the checks too. I want to box the checks. I missed getting that clipboard at the end of the fight and signing off on that check and giving it to my wife. But just everything. It's not just the light heavyweight division. I'm content being the guy who's conquered that division, and conquered one of the top dogs that are still in the division. and just sitting back and letting it play out and calling the fights. I'm content with that.
There was one or two rumours, and I know this is something that has always popped up, about you potentially returning at heavyweight. I know that was kind of a concoction with yourself and Virgil. Could you just tell me about that?
No, that was real. Like that was always a dream. You know, Roy Jones was and still is my all-time favorite fighter. From the way he did his thing inside and outside the ring. Country boy with swag, man. Pensacola, Florida. People must have forgot. They forgot what Roy was really about, because the way he did it, it always captivated me. And obviously he went to heavyweight, and I felt like I could do the same thing and could have. And that was in the cards before I retired. You know, Joshua was there, and he was probably the main guy we were targeting. And I think if you look at the post-fight press conference from Kovalev 2, Virgil said that, and I didn't know he was gonna say that. I was like, wait, we're supposed to talk about this before you say stuff like that. But you know, he believes him. He's confident, so he just said, hey man, I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, let the people into our private conversations and kind of let them know what our game plan is. So that was real. But when it's time to go and you feel it, and you wake up one day and you feel like you don't want to do it anymore, you shouldn't do it anymore.
How much of that was you achieving everything you set out to achieve, and how much of that was injuries? I know you struggled with a shoulder injury for a large part of your career.
I mean, the thing is, I've been battling the physical stuff for a long time, you know. So it wasn't like one thing. It was an accumulative effect of just grinding. You know, I work hard, man. Like I work really hard. I probably was one of the hardest workers in the sport, pound for pound. It just adds up, and you start to put in so much work. Like I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars for prehab and rehab and just all the stuff just to get to the fight. When that starts to be a thing, you know, it starts to wear on you. So it was that. I had accomplished a lot. I had just overcame and beat Kovalev in convincing fashion. There were options out there. There were tens of millions on the table. But again, one thing that I had to remind myself right before I made my final decision was that you never said you were going to do this just for money. And the goal the whole time throughout my career was to do right by my money, manage my money, me and my wife, as best we can. So whenever that day came, we would be ready. Like that like boxing is hard enough when you feel like doing it and you're motivated and your body's in agreement with, you know, the motivation and everything is clicking. It's hard enough in that instance. Imagine your heart not being in it, your body kind of checking out, but then you have to do it for money. I didn't want that to be my testimony. I didn't want that to be, you know, what I did. So the money wasn't enough to keep me. The opportunity wasn't enough to keep me. It was time. I made the decision, one of the hardest decisions that I've ever had to make, but one of the most rewarding.
You mentioned Roy Jones Jr., and I think you make a very good point in the fact that Roy's career went on for too long. Had he retired after the John Ruiz fight, I think he would have been looked upon slightly differently. Did that play any part in your decision?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I studied retirement. So I studied the Bernards. You know, I'm aware that Bernard probably went longer than he was supposed to, but Bernard started late, 20-some-odd years old, and graded for state prison. So his story was a little bit different, and didn't start getting his money toward the, somewhat toward the end. It didn't really, I don't think he was ever fully appreciated like he should have been. So that can cause you to go a little bit longer just to make sure you're not leaving anything on the table. Roy's case was different. Roy went to the Olympics. Obviously, he got robbed in '88 in Seoul, Korea. Should have won the gold. But that's one of the things that attracted me to Roy Jones. You know, he was a country boy, like I said. He always talk about himself in the third person. I'm Roy Jones, man. I don't love boxing like that, man. I'm gonna be on my farm in Pensacola, man, fishing and hunting and doing this and doing. That was always Roy. And I remember thinking as a kid, like, man, this dude is different. Like, I don't know any fighters talking like that. Most guys are trying to do this until they can't do it no more. Didn't work out like that. So that definitely played a part for sure. Definitely looked at that and I was like, man, as much as I love Roy, I just didn't want to be another one.
Very difficult question I'm about to ask you. I asked the same of Tim. You had a very storied career both as an amateur and a professional. Is there one fight or one victory that stands out for you?
It's funny because, I'm going to say, to answer your question, I'm going to say my last fight. But every major accomplishment at certain points, Kessler, first world title, Super Six, Carl Froch, Chad Dawson, and then Kovalev, like, each big victory, each monumental victory at that point in time was like the best at that time. But overall, just based on moving up in weight, Nobody giving me a shot. Nobody giving me a shot. Kovalev was undefeated. He had no reason to believe that a young guy in terms of just, not having taken a lot of punishment. It's even still, age-wise. I wasn't 40 years old, you know what I mean? There's no reason I should have went up there and did what I did to him in the first fight or the second fight. And then the first fight could have went either way. Tough fight, got off the canvas, showed grit, showed heart, showed a lot. And then all the hoopla after the fight to be able to come back and seal the deal and to let people know that, look, I told you. That was powerful. And then to walk away, that's probably the all-time greatest victory right there.
Final question, because I know we're very pressed for time here. We've mentioned Sergey Kovalev. We saw him this past weekend against Anthony Yarde. What did you make of the fight?
I think Kovalev did what he had to do. I think you definitely showed that he showed the age, and I think he showed that he's slowing down. Still got good enough technique and enough of a punch to, on any given night, to beat anybody in the light heavyweight division. But every fight's gonna be tough for him. He's in that danger zone right now, where you can go another year or two, but is it really worth it? Like, is it really worth it? Like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Obviously, I don't run his career, but if I'm in his shoes and Canelo's a real possibility, I'm going for the money. That is generational wealth. That's something that's going to be passed down to the next generation, and then I'm out. As far as Yarde, I saw that coming. Yarde and Tunde didn't know what they had going into that fight. They thought they did, and that's fine. I'm not trying to pile on. But Yarde surprised me. He fought a lot better and was more composed in the first half of the fight than I thought he was going to be. He took some good shots early. He delivered some good shots early, and he had Kovalev out in the 8th round. I don't think the ref should have stopped it, but he could have stopped it, punch or two away. But I knew after that 8th round, I said, if Kovalev can recover, that's it for Yarde. Like, you cannot have that kind of muscle mass in the sport of boxing, put punches together, and still have conditioning for a 12-round duration. Like, you can mask all that stuff against lower competition, C-level guys, which is what Yarde fought. And Timothy Bradley was the exception, not the rule. So, kind of saw that coming, but, man, I'm proud of Yarde, man. He went to Russia, something I've never done, and he showed a lot of heart, a lot of grit, man. But I think the key for him right now, he's at a crossroads, personally. And he's the CEO. He's the business. He's got to get alone with himself and make some tough decisions for his career and his life, because he can go two ways. If he doesn't change anything, he showed that he can compete against the top guys, but he hasn't shown that he can beat the top guys. And mind you, this is a guy that's been knocked out several times, right? 36 years old. He's got miles on him, and Yarde couldn't get him out of there. So Yarde has to be honest with himself and say, look, what am I doing wrong? What needs to change internally? Everybody may not like it, but how do I go from just being a guy that can compete into a guy that can beat these top guys? Because if he doesn't change anything, that's the guy he'll be known as. He'll be the guy that, hey, he's tough, he can compete, hey, but he won't win the big fights. This is a crossroads for him personally, and I just encourage him, man, to be honest with himself and make the right decision, because he's got a great foundation. I'm trying to overtalk this guy over here too. The jet lag is gone. He's not jet lagged. I just hope he brings the same energy on Saturday. But yeah, so Yarde, he showed that he can compete. But what he does next will be the difference between competing and then beating the top guys.
Andre Ward, real pleasure. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social. Lovely to see you enjoying retirement.
Yeah, it's lovely to be seen in a good light in retirement, because not everybody is. Sometimes retirement is a bad thing. So I'm thankful for that, man. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great. Thanks, John.